helping you lead a healthier life. This is CURES.
Welcome to the CURES Show, where we explore cutting-edge wellness for our body, mind, and spirit. I'm Kara Sundlin. A recent study actually found that Americans rate their angst as at least 8 out of 10, with the highest stress levels actually coming from the younger generations, ages 18 to 34. And while we roughly take 20,000 breaths a day, wow, you might not realize the profound potential our breath has for our mental health. And Dr. Emma Seppala, am I saying your last name correctly?
Correct.
Okay. She is a best-selling author, a Yale lecturer, an international keynote speaker. She also teaches executives, yes, folks in the business world, at the Yale School of Management, and is a faculty director for the Yale School of Management's Women's Leadership Program. But she's also a psychologist, a research scientist, and an expertise in the science of happiness. So we're very excited about her new book that's coming out. She's also the author of the best-selling book, The Happiness Track, but her new book is called Sovereign. It's available, I believe, for pre-order right now. Is that right?
Yeah.
So
3 more days.
2 more days. All right. So we're learning. So first of all, doctor, thank you so much for being here with us, because I think it's amazing to think that we just breathe all day long, but we don't realize at all how important this is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think given that so many of us are dealing with anxiety, and this is the fastest way to calm down is to use your breath. If you know how to use your breath, you can calm down in minutes. Which is great because you don't depend on anything or anybody to do that. So, you know, when you breathe in, your heart rate increases, and when you breathe out, it slows down. So even if you spend a couple minutes breathing out for longer than you breathed in, you're going to start to tap into your calming response.
So, and that's something that we're hearing more and more, actually, I guess, the field of breath work, but that we really are equipped with a calming switch, and it's triggered by our breath.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we kind of live in a time when we're almost always stressed or in this sort of hyped up mode, in the sympathetic or fight or flight mode. And breathing is, like you said, it's like a switch. You can tap into your parasympathetic, the calming response. Just by, like I said, extending your exhales is one way to do it. Breathing out for longer than you breathed in for a few minutes will just do the trick.
And what I think is interesting is we've maybe heard about this, maybe people have even seen it on YouTube or the idea of breath work, but this is backed by the science at Yale. You've done quite a bit of research about how our breath can really calm us down and help our mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. We looked at several different interventions to see what would most help, say, students at Yale, undergraduates who are dealing with mental health issues. And we found that of all the interventions we used, the one that had the most impact is a protocol called sky breath meditation, which is a breathing, a 20-minute breathing exercise that, in a sense, calms your nervous system down. And we see that of all of the interventions, that one had the most impact and was able to make them more resilient as the semester went on. But we also researched this breathing practice, the sky breath meditation, with veterans with trauma. So many of them came back from Afghanistan and Iraq and were not able to readjust due to combat trauma, and we found that this breathing exercise was able to help reduce and normalize their anxiety so they could move on with their lives.
Okay, so we are going to, I hope you'll continue to watch, because we are going to show a little bit that the actual full exercise would take about 5 minutes, which is really not that long. We're not going to do the whole 5 minutes on this show, but you're saying in about 5 minutes, if we are trained to do this kind of breath, we can completely shift our response, our anxiety, our stress levels.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can do that because, you know, we hear out there, and even in popular psychology, this idea, change your thoughts, change your life. You know, that's fine if you have a little upset. But if you have a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, which many of us are dealing with, then just changing your mind alone isn't going to work. And we know that even when you look at brain science, when you try and change your thoughts, but you're very stressed, it's actually very difficult. And I think we've all experienced that one. When you're very hyped up, trying to talk your way down isn't going to work.
Right. Well, people will say, oh, meditation, oh, this, oh, that. But like, you can't tell someone that's flying off the handle to go meditate. They can't do it right then. But what we can do is, you're saying we could reach for the breath.
That's exactly right. Because using your breath, you can start to calm your physiology. And as you do that, your mind starts to settle down.
So really, if our body calms first, our brain will follow?
Yeah, so I'll give you a quick example. About 10 years ago or so, my husband came in, he was pale. I said, what's wrong? And he said Jake was in an IED. So Jake was one of his close friends was an officer in charge of a vehicle in a convoy going across Afghanistan, and he drove over a roadside bomb. So in that moment, you know, most of us would go into shock immediately, but he remembered a breathing exercise that he had learned in a book, and he started to engage in that breathing exercise. And because he did that, he was able to maintain his presence of mind instead of sort of going into shock, and to do his first active duty, check on the other service members in the vehicle, to give orders to call for help. He even had the presence of mind to tourniquet his legs that were severely injured.
Wow.
And to lift them up. And then he fell unconscious. And later he was told he would have died if he hadn't done that. His injuries were so severe that he now has prosthetics on both of his legs, but he saved his life and the life of the others in the vehicle just because he could regain his presence of mind by calming his physiology down in one of the most traumatic moments we could think of.
So your study has shown our neurons respond to the pattern of our breath. So is it that is it we just slow down, or is it really specific what we need to do?
Well, we know that the brain responds to how we breathe.
Okay.
And there are many studies, not just mine, many studies that are showing that. And so that is why it's one of the most fundamental ways we can handle and benefit our own mental health is learning how to use our breath.
And you said your research actually showed that when we have certain emotions, they're tied to certain breathing patterns.
Yeah, so this is research conducted in Belgium looking at different emotions and how they connect. So for example, when you're anxious or angry, you're going to notice that you're going to breathe short and shallow. But when you're laughing, that's another way that your emotion changes your breath. Or you're sobbing, right? Or you come home after a long day's work and you just heave a big sigh of relief.
Yes.
So I thought that part of the study was interesting, but it's kind of obvious. But the second part of the study was the most interesting part because they had different people come in and just gave them the breathing instructions that corresponded to the emotion. And they asked them, how do you feel? So for example, they would give you the angry breath and make you breathe that way and then say, how do you feel? And then what they found, can you imagine what they found?
So if I start breathing the way an angry person breathes, I start to feel angry?
Exactly, and actors know how to do this. But what this means for the rest of us is that, you know, it's really hard to talk our way out of stress or anxiety. You know, when someone comes up to you and they're like, hey, don't be so anxious. Like, that's just not helpful.
Yeah, the worst thing you can say to an angry person is calm down, right?
Right, because no one in the history of calm down has ever calmed down by being told to calm down.
Yes.
And you gotta know now what the brain science behind that. But using your breath, you can shift how you feel.
Okay, so we want to think of our breath. I think of some of the healers that I've interviewed on this show, because actually your book, Sovereign, does delve, this is very scientific, but it delves into the spiritual. And I'm thinking from the mystics and the ancients,
Correct.
They've told us certain vibrations, certain sounds, deep breathing. It is like our remote control. We can access our deeper wisdom, our deeper consciousness. So this crosses both realms. There's a lot of science, and it mimics what we've been taught in many wisdom traditions.
Absolutely. I mean, this is not reinventing the wheel. The breathing practices that we researched for veterans are very much stemming from the yoga tradition from India. The sky breath meditation protocol is offered by a nonprofit called Project Welcome Home Troops for veterans, but it's also offered by a nonprofit called Art of Living that originally comes from India. So these are ancient practices, and yet due to the research we're doing, we're really finding how powerful they are.
Yeah. So here's an example. I guess a breathing exercise would be that we breathe until our lungs are full. Maybe you count to 4.
Yes.
And then you exhale, and it should be longer
Correct.
than the inhale.
Yeah.
So will you guide us through a little bit of what it looks like? We don't necessarily do the whole
Sure.
5 minutes, but just so people can get an idea. Does it matter where we put our hands? Like, should it be on our heart or our belly,
Yeah.
or does that matter?
Have your hands open on your lap because that allows you to breathe more deeply. And so you can close your eyes just so that you can relax more, and you can just breathe in for a count of 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, and breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Try to breathe through the nose. Again, breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, and breathe out through the nose, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's how you would do it.
in and out through the nose.
In and out through the nose, ideally. If you have bad allergies, you can, but it's good because through the nose, if you think about it, when you're running, when you're in sort of a sympathetic mode, you start to breathe through your mouth. So when you breathe through your nose, it sends a more of a relaxation signal to the
Okay, because I was thinking, gosh, I can get more air through my mouth, but that's exactly right. If we were stressed or running or trying to get more oxygen, we would use our mouth. Okay, so breathing in through the nose and out the nose. And I mean, another exercise that I know they're teaching in schools, and we've talked about on this program too, is the 4-4-4 breath, which is breathing in and holding for a box. So you would breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for. But I always think that a lot of scientists like yourself and would say that then we're not doing the exhale longer. Does that matter?
You know, I think the box breath is also extremely helpful. But tapping into that parasympathetic, when you lengthen your exhales, you're literally slowing down your heart rate. So, and these exercises are all great things to do, you know, when you have a few minutes before going home, between work and home, or before a stressful meeting, or to calm yourself down after something that happened. And then what you want to do to condition your nervous system, you know, more the way you would condition your body when you go to the gym to be stronger, you can also condition your nervous system to be calmer by doing a longer protocol like the sky breath meditation that we researched on a daily basis. And then you just kind of go about your day with more resilience.
So it's called the sky breath meditation. Is that something that we should Google? Is there a place that you offer it? You said it's freely offered to a lot of folks.
So Project Welcome Home Troops offers it for free to military and veterans. And then Art of Living is a nonprofit that offers it for, you can do it on Zoom over a weekend. I don't offer it myself.
Yes, okay. But that is what you studied for the idea of breath work. Okay.
Yeah.
So sky breath meditation would be breathing in for a count of about 3.
So sky breath meditation is a number of different breathing exercises put together in 20 minutes, so it takes a little bit longer to learn.
Oh, okay, okay. But if we just want to, even just the general of the inhale, if you were to pick a number, what would you like us to inhale for?
Breathe in for 4.
Okay.
Hold for a moment. Breathe out for 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
So double.
Double.
If we can't do that right away, you could start at 3 and get to 6. Or...
Exactly.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
But we want to, when we breathe in through our nose, and we want to feel this part, our lower belly, actually come out the way we would in yoga.
Ideally, but I also don't want people to stress out about how they're breathing.
Right.
So I just always say, just try to exhale a little longer than you breathe in. Do this for 5 minutes with your eyes closed. Guaranteed you're going to feel calmer after. That's something that almost everyone always notices right away. So you have it in your back pocket for any moment that you're stressed or you want to prepare for something. You want to be calmer. You want to be more present, because so many of us have so much going on. We take in over 60,000 gigabytes of information every day over our media channels. Did you know that?
No, but that sounds like a lot.
It's a lot.
And if you're a news anchor, maybe it's more.
Right? No, exactly. So sometimes you'll come home and you'll think, oh my gosh, I want to be present with my family, but my mind is all at work, or I'm at work and my mind is full of what happened at home. These are ways to bring our mind to slow it down, and as we slow it down, we become present.
So it's also, we talk about anxiety, but it's also for performance. You teach business classes, so if you just want to have peak performance, be able to learn better, or give an awesome ace your presentation at a big account, doing this matters?
Absolutely. So I think we've all probably experienced what it's like to work for someone who's really stressed or very anxious. It doesn't really feel like a leader, and it also makes you stressed as well. So in order to be at your most effective, when you do exercises like meditation or breathing, research shows that you become more emotionally intelligent, you're a better decision maker, you have better cognitive abilities, so attention, memory, focus, you're more creative, and you're more charismatic. Because if you look at the research on charisma, for example, and you break it down, you know, people think it's like some God-given gift to the lucky few, you know? But when you ask, well, how do you feel around someone charismatic? It's like I was the only person in the room. Well, what is it about them? They're fully present. And it's so rare to meet someone who's fully present with you. That's what it breaks down to when you look at the data.
Wow, okay. So not only leaders, but parents, right? We're the leaders of our home. So you found in your research that the younger generations are even more stressed. I have 2 teenagers in my house, and I can tell you that they do get angry at me when I tell them, let's breathe. But like, how do we, what's the best way? It's such a powerful, simple tool. What's the best way for us to teach this to our kids?
You know, the best way to teach this to your kids is to model it. If they see you stressed and all over the place, they're going to think, who are you to teach me or recommend anything? But if you take care of your own mind, if every day you condition yourself to be calmer, to be more present, then you become their rock, And two, they're going to want to have a little bit of what you have. Well, how do you do that, Mama? How do you stay so calm? But also, you're going to show up as your best self. And that's, we can't always control everything that our kids are going through or feeling, but what we can do is show up as our best self so that when they're stressed out, we're not also stressed out, but we're able to meet them where they are and be there for them.
Yes, so you also wrote another highly popular, maybe I think it might have been a bestseller, your book, The Happiness Track.
Yeah.
And so how do these dovetail? The idea of staying present, of learning something simple like breath work, and this elusive term that we all want, which is happiness.
Yes. So it's really interesting. You can think of happiness in two ways. You can think of it, at least scientists do, as there's hedonic happiness and eudaimonic. Hedonic happiness you can think of as the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, like money, power, fame, likes on social media, chocolate cake, all the things that give you a little pleasure, a little kick, and like that dopamine high.
Yes.
And then it crashes soon afterwards, leaving you wanting for more. Right?
Okay, right. So you just want more money, more fame, more.
Yeah,
yes.
And it's also very self-involved. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's fun, right? But then you could think of the eudaimonic happiness as the fulfillment you get when you do something for others. Like, Cara, like you through your shows are trying to help other people, right? Or community service, or connection with nature, or connection with divinity, or whatever it is that it pulls us out of ourselves, right? And so research shows that kind of happiness is long-term. And I think we've all experienced a moment where we've helped someone else, and all of a sudden we realize how good we feel, right?
Yes.
And I can really summarize the research on happiness in one sentence, is that the happiest people who also live the most fulfilled and the healthiest lives are the ones who balance a life characterized by compassion, balanced with self-compassion, because you don't want to burn yourself out, right? So it's like taking care of self, taking care of others.
Okay, and that's the hard part, right? Because if someone is really upsetting us, or we're angry at them, or we're thinking negative thoughts about them, then it's hard to be compassionate. But that's the skill. If we can train ourselves to be compassionate towards those that are even hurting us, we are actually happier for it.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and the other thing is that when we do harbor on sort of negative thoughts about someone else, we're letting them occupy prime real estate in our own mind. Wouldn't we rather be thinking about the people we love? But often it's the people that are pushing our buttons that we spend more time thinking about. We're giving them that prime real estate. But how do we come out of it? I think compassion is a really great method, because oftentimes people who act in that kind of way are suffering. And that's why it sucks to be them in a way, right?
Yeah.
And so realizing that can help, but also breathing a meditation to kind of help, because with the emotion, we do have emotions, we're emotional people, right? And so we do need to address those, which I can also talk about.
Yeah, let's talk about the emotions. I think all of us, you said, are emotional beings. Some of us are probably more emotional than others. If you live with a teenager, you might see that. But I've heard that emotions are really information, and we shouldn't put so much stock in them. Is that true?
Yeah, and what's really interesting to me is that, there's this idea that you should leave your emotions at the door when you go to work, or, and they're not shoes. Like, you can't take them off, and you're feeling them all the time. Let's say you go through your inbox, 10 messages in the span of 2 minutes. Yeah. Each message could elicit a different emotion. First, your boss, not happy with something. Then your tax person saying you owe more than you thought. Then your spouse saying they can't pick the kids up, can you? And you've got a meeting. It goes on, right? And all of a sudden,
I'm feeling the overwhelm already.
Right?
Yeah, and that happens. That's a normal day for a lot of folks.
Our ancestors, before technology, would never have had to deal with this many emotions in this shortest period of time.
Right.
No wonder. Those are called micro-stressors. No wonder by the end of the day we could feel beat up, even though we weren't laying bricks. We were just, sitting at our computer. But the point being, no matter how many MDs or PhDs or black belts or dishes you know how to cook, chances are you have as much formal training about what to do with your big, bad, negative emotions as a 5-year-old. We've never received formal training.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that most people do is suppress emotions.
Okay.
Right? Just suck it up, buttercup.
Yeah.
And the result is that we actually, at the level of the brain, the emotion increases. So you get more angry when you pull it in. And if I'm suppressing anger to benefit a relationship, let's say I'm angry and I don't want to show you because I want to benefit our relationship, your heart rate increases.
Okay.
And have you ever had that where you're around someone and you're like, I don't know why, but I just don't feel comfortable?
Sure, and we get and that's something that we need to listen to, right? Often
Yes.
I mean, in the book Sovereign, and I will get into this. I mean, we get into intuition and all of that,
That's right.
and you know, I think I remember there was that famous book about fear that we'd be the only animal that would get into an elevator with every bone in our body saying, I don't like that person, I shouldn't get in the elevator, and we'll do it anyway, not to be rude, and then
Right.
something bad can happen.
Right. No, I mean, yeah, there's so much we could talk about that. Exactly. But the point is that we suppress our emotion to maintain a good relationship with someone, but then the person feels their physiology responds and doesn't feel comfortable. So it's so ironic, right?
Yeah.
But the point is that we haven't learned how to handle our emotions, and that's where breathing can really help.
So how does breathing help us handle our emotions?
Well, because it calms down let's say you're anxious, right? You're anxious before going on stage, and then you calm your nervous system down, and then your mind is able to think more clearly. And as your mind is able to think more clearly, you can handle things better.
Okay.
Right? Because the only reason we can't handle things when we're emotional, when it's a big negative emotion, for example, is that our fight or flight is activated.
Yes.
And we're not able to think clearly.
Yes.
Right?
So I'm thinking of there's Dan Siegel.
Dan.
So I guess he writes more about children, but I'm thinking as parents where he talks about the whole brain child, and he has this example that you want your brain to be like this, but when it's flipped its lid, you don't have access.
Right.
The child doesn't have access, which I'm sure we're not that different, to the upstairs, to the logical brain. So you have to first put the brain back together, and then you can go up and down. And is that really, when you think about it, is that we can't handle much at all when we're in a fight or flight state. So step one is do the breathing and calm down.
Absolutely. And there are other ways that we can calm down. To be absolutely right. I absolutely love Dan, and that is correct. And adults are the same as a child. When adults are having a big, bad, negative emotion, anger, anxiety, fear,
We're the same?
We're in the same state as a child having a tantrum. You can't talk a child out of it. We also have a hard time talking ourselves. We can't talk someone else out of it.
Okay.
So what do? Breathing is definitely great. Other options are going out into nature, unplugged, without your phone, just being in nature. Research shows that even 5 minutes outside helps to reduce your anxiety, depressive feelings. We've all heard of the benefits of exercise.
Yes.
And although
Move a muscle, change a mood, we've said on this show many times with other psychologists.
So true.
Okay.
And when it's an anxious or very, where your heart rate's really going, then it's probably better to do a calmer exercise.
Okay.
So you're not stressing your nervous system more.
Right. Okay. So we just recently had a show on anger where the new research said that the idea of venting, it doesn't really support it, because the more we get angry and stomp and vent, we actually can make the anger bigger. So we really want to reach for those calming tools.
Yes.
Number one, the breath. It's free. You always have it with you.
Yes.
And so how long does it take, on average? How long would it take to make this so we could actually access it in times of stress and use it? Because there's probably a learning curve.
Yeah, there's a learning curve. I mean, for myself, I was in New York and during 9/11, and I saw the second plane crash. And after that day, I had so much anxiety. Before leaving my apartment, I was shaking. And it wasn't until I learned the Sky Breath meditation protocol that I was able to, it's almost, I think of it as reprogramming yourself for greater calm, or coming back to this sort of more stable place.
So even later we could do this, like we're reprogramming ourselves after a trauma, like years later?
Yes, and we've seen that with veterans, which is such good news, right? How many people are walking around with trauma from car accidents, from childhood, from war, from so many things, right? And this idea that we can actually condition our nervous system to come back to a place where it's in a quote unquote sort of more normal state, right?
So how would we do that? Like, what would be a good protocol for people watching? If you want to try something, do we do it every day for 21 days? Or what's the protocol to try and make this so that we can be rewired?
Exactly. I mean, I always talk about the difference between a skeptical scientist and a cynical.
Yeah.
The cynical will be like, oh, that's never going to work. I'm not going to do the experiment. The skeptical is like, that's never going to work, but I'm going to give it a shot. So I always recommend do it for 30 days. Even if you meditate for 30 days. And just so you can notice, because if you go to the gym for one day, are you going to be stronger?
No.
No.
Right. It takes muscle
Are you going to feel that
memory.
much better? Momentarily, sure. But if you do it for 30 days, that's where you're going to see it. And then you can prove it to yourself. Because I always say, don't believe the science even. Just see, you're your own lab,
Yes. Okay, so you would suggest 5 minutes a day for 30 days.
Definitely, you could definitely start with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then learning a protocol like the sky breath meditation, which is a little bit longer.
Yeah.
That's our research has shown. And then also there are great meditation apps out there. Like there's one that I use called Sattva, and that I love, that I use every day, probably twice a day.
Okay, spell that for us.
Sattva.
Okay, because I use I've had it for years, but I use the Chopra meditation because I like the Sanskrit, the idea of a mantra that I don't know what it means, because when my thoughts start racing and I say a mantra that I don't understand, it helps me.
Exactly.
But it's very individual what helps us, right?
Absolutely, and actually that's why I like the Sattva app, because there's also mantras on it, and I agree with you. You know, in my profession, I'm in my head a lot, you know, and you are too. And so it's so helpful to have practice that gets you out of the head. And that's why, there's a lot of research on mindfulness, and that could be really helpful for some people. But for myself, I felt like, wow, it keeps me in my mind, observing and so forth. I want to get out of the mind. I want to get into the body, and I want to really calm down at the physiological level.
So as we breathe, that's really what's happening. We're getting into our body, and as our body calms, then our mind can follow.
Exactly.
And tell us a little bit. We're going to have less than 5 minutes left, but this is the new book. I see that it's going to be out everywhere, Target, Amazon, wherever, but wherever you want to find it, just within a couple of days you can get this. Sovereign, reclaim your freedom, energy, and power in a time of distraction, uncertainty, and chaos. So there's some real scientific things in here. In fact, one of the most influential books I've read in years. One of the reviews, but you kind of take us through. But how do we? What did you find about the connection between ourselves and our spirit?
Yeah, you know, I'd been writing about the science of happiness for years, and I saw that even if you do all the practices, you can still be struggling. And what I found was that we fall for ideas, behaviors, thought patterns that are destructive, and if we do fall for those, it doesn't matter how much we're doing the other things. I'll give you a specific example. So whenever I teach audiences, I ask, how many of you are self-critical? I would say 95%.
Yeah, we're all critics, right?
Right. And yet 95% raise their hand. And then if you look at it from a psychological perspective, self-criticism is a form of self-loathing, which is such a strong word, right?
Yeah.
And so I often ask, okay, so what did you say to yourself last time you made a big mistake or did something embarrassing, right? People will inevitably say things like, you're such an idiot, and worse. You know, and when I taught over the pandemic on Zoom, and I'd ask this question, and in the chat feature, people would be writing the worst things that they say to themselves. And then I'd ask, okay, what would you say to your best friend who made the same mistake? And the words are, you're okay, everyone makes a mistake, it's no big deal, you've got this. Such supportive words. And I always ask, what's the difference between you and your best friend? Nothing except that you live in different bodies. So in Sovereign, I'm asking people to reevaluate and question ways in which they are thinking and behaving that are not supporting them, and inviting them instead to embrace a different, more life-supportive relationship with themselves that leads them to be able to show up at their full potential.
And that is absolutely what we all want. So I encourage everyone to get Sovereign and to practice the sky breath meditation. Thank you for coming down from Yale University. We appreciate and all the great research. Congratulations on the book.
Thank you, Kara.
Thank you so much. And you can also follow me at Kara Sundlin, where I post more information on the cutting edge of wellness. You can also find this episode on your favorite podcast platform. Have a great day and be well.